We're back with more NBA playoff coverage, and in this one, I will be covering the Game 6 action between the Knicks and the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, that was the only Game 6 up to this point, and pretty much everything was on the line. Most people were trying to write Indiana off, making this out to be a must-win game for them, with the potential to, if they ended up losing it, going to Madison Square Garden and having to face off against them in a Game 7, which would have been tough, yeah, but I guess people forget, for whatever reason, that they eliminated them last season, and not to mention that the Knicks also managed to lose the war of attrition so quickly in that game, which certainly didn't help the cause. But that's neither here nor there. The key for this game, well, there were a couple of keys for this game, honestly, and they were really simple. Obviously, the theme of the whole series has been about maintaining the dominant pace, maintaining your own pace, carving out your own niche when it came to operating on the basketball court. Because let's be completely honest, if the Pacers were to have to slow down in the half court and operate, we saw what can happen there. But the Knicks have also repeatedly shown themselves that they just can't match with Indiana at all when they are both trying to go neck and neck with each other in a shootout. It's not the best recipe for success for them either. So who was going to be able to dictate the pace in this ball game? And then also, when it came to the co-stars, would it be Halliburton or Siakam who would have a bigger impact on the game? Or would it be Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson being able to do so with their spurts over their last few games, including the win that they had in Game 5? Like, they could not stop them at all whatsoever, no matter who they assigned to them. And that was certainly a question that the team as a whole had to answer, especially the few players who would be designated with those assignments, right? But instantly, and I mean instantly, what I have to note about it over the course of this entire game here is all centered around Andrew fucking Nembhard, because my goodness, that man had been struggling on both sides of the ball over the last few games. I'm not gonna lie to you. Even if they stated, prior to Game 5, that he was averaging around 10 points a series in this series per game, he was relatively inefficient from that front. He'd been shooting below league average, and he couldn't really hit any three-point jumpers to save his life. He turned the ball over an absurd amount of times. And his defense, although, in this series against Jalen Brunson, he has held him to one of the lowest field goal percentages for a primary defender when guarding Brunson. But at the same time, generally speaking, he'd been starting to get picked on and having a few defensive lapses of his own, allowing Jalen Brunson in certain cases to get buckets, even when, he might not have necessarily been a direct man-on-man matchup, right? So that was just relatively unacceptable for him. But in this game, he decided that he was going to handle Brunson in a multitude of ways. Whether it was instantly just sticking it to him on the offensive side of the basketball, or whether it was just relentlessly hounding him on defense and just making life extremely difficult for him out there. He was right on him, doing everything that he could possibly do in the legal sense without fouling, just getting physical with him down to the wire on the shot clock, to where he just throws up a desperation shot or has to get it out of his hands. And there were multiple possessions where the Knicks literally had to run their offense without Jalen Brunson, because he was just getting jammed up perfectly by guys like Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard. More prevalently, also, the amount of on-ball pressure he had as well, whether it was, Jalen Brunson or a few other players over the course of this game, was elite. The man had 5 steals in one half. And he notched another one for 6 in the game. That kind of effort on the defensive end and that nose for the basketball led to some pretty big moments for Indiana, especially when it came to trying to set the tone early and often, getting themselves further ahead of the proverbial clock as compared to the Knicks in this one. So that was relatively important. And keep in mind, too, Nembhard still, because foul trouble had been an issue for him as well, and he did face some here, honestly, because it became some complete bullshit, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I shit you not, some of the fouls that they called, man, were just incredibly atrocious. I noted it here. It's like at a point, like we understand what the superstar call is. It's gonna happen, right? You're going to want to boost, I guess, the production of your superstars, I suppose. So granting them certain foul calls at times, it's probably gonna happen. It's not necessarily always right, but it is what it is. And yet still, the amount of shit that both Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson got away with in this ball game when it came to fouls of their own is just insane. I mean, even Karl-Anthony Towns still had foul trouble, but there was a sequence later on in the game, and maybe I'm getting far ahead of myself, but this man literally fell down on Aaron Nesmith to the point where I guess Nesmith got the wind knocked out of him. Like, Karl-Anthony Towns is a large fucking man falling on a player in Aaron Nesmith that can be stocky, but is nowhere near his weight whatsoever. And he suffers through that, and you mean to tell me that they call a foul on Aaron Nesmith? What the fuck? Like, that's a fucking joke. And then not to mention as well, you have Jalen Brunson consistently trying to stick it to Andrew Nembhard, pushing him around because he doesn't like the pressure. And I guess the refs don't happen to see that. But then when Nembhard responds, then he's wrong. Then there was a sequence with him later on in the game where he literally has Jalen Brunson fucking headbutt him. And there's no foul called on him whatsoever. They don't even acknowledge that it happened. It's like, that's so fucking stupid. Like, come on, man. But I digress. Nonetheless, to, now parlay it into Karl-Anthony Towns as well. He was rendered very limited as well. You'll read the box score at this point, and you'll note that he did have a 20-point, 10-rebound double-double. But he was not really that efficient at all. He was also turnover prone in this one because of the amount of help defense. I mean, bro, they threw everything they possibly could at it. And when it mattered, it was so effective. I mean, Nembhard once again trapping him perfectly in a double team to where he could not find an open shooter at all. And he was left no choice but to just chuck up a shot very, very late, to the point where at that point it was already a 24-second shot clock violation. To do that in that moment, that is exceptional, honestly. Because, again, when you look at it in the regular season, he killed the team. And yet the same team managed to, come together and do as best as they could to just keep him grounded in his abilities. And it wasn't just Andrew Nembhard as well getting in there. I mean, you had a rotating cast of people. I guess Tony Bradley at times got in there. Jarris Walker as well, not even necessarily just on Karl-Anthony Towns, came in off the bench again. Gave them very good defense. He did suffer a very unfortunate injury, though, later on in the game. It looked so bad. And I hope that he is able to make a full and speedy recovery from it, because it looked very gruesome, to be completely honest with you. So I don't necessarily know what the timetable would be at this point. I mean, I suppose, with things going down tomorrow, we'll figure it out eventually. Or, well, not even tomorrow. No, it's happening on Thursday. What the hell? But anyways, yeah, you just hope he can recover from that. It did not look pretty at all. Okay. But yeah, in terms of guarding Karl Anthony Towns, man, even if he was banged up, he's still a dominant force. At least trying to become one in the post, even though you would like to see him spacing the floor as the self-proclaimed greatest three-point shooting big man in NBA history, right? But that didn't matter when you're that much bigger than everybody else and you actually just take it upon yourself to utilize that size to your strength to where nobody can stop you. So, of course you're going to keep going to it. But for whatever reason, again, the double teams, in some cases, began to tire him out. And also, something that didn't end up working in his favor at all was Pascal Siakam's defense on him. I shit you not. Like, they were, and especially him, he was relentlessly sliding his feet when Karl Anthony Towns was trying to get something to go. On most possessions that he was specifically guarding him, he couldn't try to pull off those spin moves effectively without getting an offensive foul. He couldn't necessarily get those bread and butter shots up that he would be looking for. And it was incredibly tough for him to even get in the lane in the first place. That's what Pascal Siakam was doing to him. And keep in mind, when it came to him, he was getting torched by him as well as Miles Turner also, who, did still find himself susceptible to that at many points of time. But even he, in the most important moments of the game, and especially down the stretch as this thing got out of hand, he was able to tighten it up and just make him completely a ghost in this particular game plan. And then the rest of the Knicks were just left to try and do it on their own. OG Anunoby honestly did hit some fluky ass shots, but he did give them solid contributions on both sides of the ball. You always have to appreciate his hustle as well. Mikal Bridges also, and Josh Hart as well. They played key parts, but it just wasn't enough, because at the end of the day, the Pacers were able to get their offense clicking completely. They found their three-point shot in the most interesting of ways. I mean, they unloaded Miles Turner on them early. They had Pascal Siakam light them up from three and eventually find himself getting a game-leading 31 points. They had Aaron Nesmith hitting open three-pointers and Andrew Nembhard hitting open three-pointers. Benedict Mathurin gave them another spectacular performance off the bench once again on very efficient shooting and his ability to just further increase the tempo. Yeah, the fastest team in pace in the league, the fastest team in terms of miles run per hour in the fucking league, can reach an even faster tempo. That's all I'm saying about that. But yeah, even he performed very well. Ben Shepherd, it's always interesting with him as a defender, but even he was able to provide some good spacing for them, generally speaking. And he hit a couple of shots for them. DJ McConnell obviously continues to be a very interesting force off the bench for them. And Thomas Bryant would also become really important for some reason. I mean, Like, he decided for whatever reason to just have a 9-point third quarter, well, 8-point third quarter, with a couple threes at that point to go along with Siakam's 10. Like, that man was just getting it in, bro. I kid you not. Like, Pascal Siakam was just getting slithery out there. Like, there was a particular play, he just gets right up and through Mikal Bridges for an and-one with a pretty much back-armed finish at the rim. It was insane. The mid-range was on point for him. Those signature fadeaways are just something to watch from him as well. It's fucking wild, man. And, you know, when you look at it, those 31 points, bro, honestly, if they didn't say anything, I wouldn't have even really known that he had that kind of output. You know, the Pacers certainly appreciate that. And even, you know, as general fans, we do. It's just that it's like, man, it appears as though it's like he's not even having that kind of game. Like, it's a little bit shocking, right? And yeah, there's been a pattern as well. Pretty much every other game, when it comes to games 2, 4, and 6, he's had 30-plus point outputs. So, you know, even if they don't necessarily get talked about or have that kind of attention, you know, we recognize that around here. Like, that's how you gotta do it. And he was efficient as well. You know, again, all the plays weren't necessarily designed for him, but, you know, there were some cases where he took advantage of mismatches, and then there were some cases in which I'm like, okay, like, you probably should be trying to get your way there. Like, he had, like, later on in the game, for example, like Landry Shamet Garden, and I'm clamoring for him at that point. Maybe they weren't necessarily trying, like, at that point, right? But, like, he should be able to get a bucket on him. So I'm just saying, like, hey, like, back him down. That's an easy score. He's not going to be able to keep up with you. It's that simple. But the most important thing from this, of course, would have to be how Tyrese Halliburton ended up playing. Now, yes, they did answer the call on one end with holding Jalen Brunson under 20 points, with him actually missing a free throw at some point in this game. And with Karl-Anthony Towns being inefficient and a non-factor when it mattered the most, they still needed to have Tyrese Halliburton step up to the plate and ensure that they were going to reign victorious here. And let's be honest, it was rough. I mean, early on, he had 2 turnovers in just the first quarter alone, after going 2 straight games without having a single one. He couldn't necessarily find any shot in the first quarter either. He was scoreless, but, you know, the aggression was there. They questioned that. They also questioned his killer instinct at some point, which is fucking crazy. But again, I once more digress, right? He still managed to make an impact in some way. You know, even if the shots aren't necessarily falling for him, he still took it upon himself to take contact in the paint and drive to the basket to create open looks for other people. And that willingness to do so trickled down to where many other people in certain cases were able to just rotate on over to the paint, have multiple bodies attract to them, and they just whip it back to an open three-point shooter at the top of the key or on the wing or in the corner to get the shot they wanted. And on this night, they were exceptionally efficient. You combine that with the fact that they were able to once more have a steep advantage in points off turnovers which some of them were caused by Halliburton as well, getting active in the passing lanes and just swiping away different passes, ramping up his intensity on Jalen Brunson as well, and forcing him to make difficult decisions on the fly, even getting a steal from him as Nembhard was engaging him. Again, just a team effort through and through, and man, that shit paid off completely. And when it was time for Halliburton to put the game on ice, he really shined through. I mean, an 8-point fourth quarter saw him put up just multiple floaters at that point. I mean, his three-pointer, which he does tend to rely on a lot rather than, drive to the basket. That's just not the kind of player he is yet. But the three-pointer wasn't necessarily falling for him at that point. So what did he decide to do? He gets the Mikal Bridges assignment as he's expecting, and he starts in that fourth quarter to get him on his back hip. He traps him, puts him in pretty much defensive jail at that point, right? Like, if you're going to have any player trying to guard you and they're behind your hip, you're not going to last that much of a chance against them. With Bridges held ineffective there, Halliburton was able to dictate his own pace of his drive. And from there, he just started putting up some routine floaters. Just going and getting 4 buckets in that stretch of time in that fashion. And then eventually, as things would, settle down, as he would continue to dime up the defense as well, in the most extravagant of ways, he would fittingly have the Knicks be sent home with a dagger 3 from the fucking logo. And man, that stadium went so ballistic in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It went so fucking ballistic, man. Now, obviously, Landry Shamet was trying to have himself a little legacy game by getting a few threes before and after that particular shot. But nobody gave a fuck about that, because at the end of the day, what was on the line is that, both teams around the past 25 years or so have not reached an NBA Finals. And the Pacers, for the first time since 2000, are going to do that off the backs of their 125-108 victory on Saturday. They're really gonna do it. They have a very good chance to not only make the finals, of course, they've done it at this point, but they have a real shot to win. And, it's going to be a pretty exciting one. I was just generally talked about this, so I'm not going to necessarily have all of that conjecture here. But I will say that, man, the Pacers and Thunder, it's going to be a series that goes all the way. It's just going to be pure basketball through and through. It is literal strength on strength. I did take a look at their series history in the regular season. This particular regular season, of course, the Pacers did not necessarily do well against them either time. They suffered double-digit losses in both games, I think. But at the same time, both of these teams are just on incredibly different levels now, and the atmosphere of the playoffs is much different compared to regular season games that might not necessarily end up meaning that much. especially when you're looking at interconference play, because I mean, obviously, those teams faced off just 2 times. So it's a very small sample size, even if you want to look at the fact that the Pacers did get blown out. But anything can happen when these kinds of things are at stake. Anything. And that is just going to make things incredibly beautiful. But to just get into some more notes about the game, to cap off the ceremony, it would be Pascal Siakam who would get the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, and well-deserved. You know, obviously, Tyrese Halliburton had the moments. He had the moments, man. He had the moments. Whether it was his exceptional no turnover, 32, 12, and 15 turnover. Well, 15 assist game in Game 4. Whether it was obviously the cinematic masterpiece that was Game 1. You know, obviously those things stand out. But at the end of the day, the drop-off last game probably hurt him. You know, while Halliburton has been a player that has stood out the most, at the same time, you can't argue with Pascal Siakam's consistency. Yes, again, the 30-point games every other game is pretty fucking inconsistent. Like, that's just, those are peaks and valleys of overall production. But at the same time, he didn't really waver all that much. He was a steady presence for them. And sometimes that's what it takes in a co-star. Even if they're not necessarily a player who makes a lot of noise overall on the court. You know that you can trust them in some fashion to just hold it down, keep things moving along, and when it's time for them to completely break out, they will be more than ready to do it. That's what Pascal Siakam did in this series overall. So he's certainly deserving of it. I have no issue with that whatsoever. Even after, you know, letting it linger in my mind for the last couple of days, it's not an issue whatsoever. But yeah, that will do it for this one. A pretty interesting one indeed. But I hope you guys did enjoy it all the same, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.